G'day everyone, and welcome to Chris Rankin's Music Crush. Special episode today. I'm going to be ranking the albums of progressive death metal band Between the Buried and Me, a band out of Raleigh, North Carolina. Easily one of my favourite bands of all time, definitely in my top 10, maybe even in my top 6 or 5 of metal bands of all time, but definitely in the top 10. And one of their albums that I showed recently is in my top 5 favourite albums of all time. Before I get started on ranking, I have to give a quick mention to this because it came out today. Also one of my favourite bands of all time, definitely my equal favourite metal band of all time. And they released this today, Fear Factory, Aggression Continuum. Came out today. I got it first thing this morning, as early as I possibly could. I have a bit of a tradition where I always buy every Fear Factory album except for their debut, which I bought about 2 months after its release, but every Fear Factory album ever since I've always bought on the opening morning of its release. A little bit of turmoil with this band. Obviously the great Burton C. Bell is no longer with the band, and who knows what's going to happen. If this is their last album, it's a really, really good one. Certainly maybe not as great as the 3 big ones, Soul of a New Machine, Demanufacture, and Obsolete. Obsolete is equal favourite metal album of all time. That's how much I love that album. I've seen Fear Factory every single time they've done a show in Perth and Western Australia, and even Fremantle, Scarborough. Every single show that they've done in Western Australia I have seen. And their first show that they ever did in Australia was in 1993 at Scarborough, and I saw that. And of course, I've told you before, I'm in their music video for Cyber Waste that they filmed in just south of Fremantle, Western Australia. So just wanted to show that. Came out today, got it today. It's absolutely brilliant, and who knows if it's their last. I kind of don't think that Fear Factory without Burton C. Bell on vocals could possibly be Fear Factory anymore. That's just my opinion, but for me, in my opinion, they either get back to that lineup with Burton and Dino and everyone makes up, and I still actually really like the original lineup of Raymond and Christian, but Burton either comes back in the band, or in my opinion, Fear Factory should not go on, because anyway. But it's a great album, and I just want to show you that because it came out today and they're a very special band to me. But ranking Between the Buried and Me. So I spoke a little bit about them before, and I'll try not to make this video too long, which could be tricky because I love this band a lot, so I have a lot of things to say about them. But yeah, progressive death metal band. They started out as pretty much all about brutality. Their main core of their albums and their music is best described as progressive death metal, technical death metal. They call themselves adult contemporary progressive death metal. And the reason they say that is because they don't tend to fit into all the cliches and tropes that you would associate with death metal. Their album covers aren't gory. They're not all about blood and gore and evil and all. In fact, one of the few negatives about the band is that their album covers are pretty bland and not lame, but just lackluster. But that's kind of what they've always been about, that they're definitely heavy, brutal, all the things, but they don't fall into the category that every other death metal band follows. Very much about progressiveness, very much about pushing the envelope of what can be in progressive death metal and death metal in general. Musicianship is incredible, flawless. I've seen them every single time live. They've played in Perth. Absolutely flawless. One of their albums I saw them play in its entirety, which was just mind-blowing. One of the songs they did off that, which I'll mention in an album a bit later, called Extremophile Elite, I've quite often said is one of the greatest things I've ever heard played live. Just mind-blowing. I'm not a musician, so when a band writes a song like that and plays it flawlessly like they do and they did live, it just blows me away. Absolutely blows me away. They have many, many great songs, but the thing I love about this band is that their best songs, in my opinion, are some of the best heavy metal songs ever made. They just have this knack of having lots of great songs, but when they pull out a great one, it is up on Mount Everest of metal songs. And they have moments, and I've said this on my Headbangers Facebook page, there are a few songs of theirs where if I've got the CD playing in the car and it gets to that song, it's so good that I pull the car over to the side of the road if I can, so I can just stop and listen to that song and enjoy it in its entirety, because it is so fucking good. There's just no doubt about it. I love this band very much. Formed very early 2000s, I want to say 98 and 99 maybe even. I don't know exactly when they started. Their debut came out in 2002. As I say, from Raleigh, North Carolina. 5-piece band. Tommy Rogers that does both the vocals and on keyboard. Started out mainly doing growl vocals, a little bit of clean vocals, and as time went on, mixed clean vocals and growls. The very first album was very much brutal death metal, a little bit deathcore at times, a little bit of slam death metal at times. The main core of their albums and their history, very much progressive death metal. And in the last sort of 3 albums, one album in particular went more into just straight up progressive metal and even progressive rock. They get it compared a little bit to Opeth. Opeth have more of a sort of a organic sound, if you like, whereas Between the Buried and Me, quite similar, but maybe a bit more technical sounding and a little bit more avant-garde and a bit more of jazz into it. Opeth have some acoustic passages, whereas Between the Buried and Me have some like piano and brass and jazz and really quirky moments as well. But look, we'll get into the rankings. I just want to give you a bit of background. For some reason, I don't know why it is about this band. I think it's because of the look of the albums, and I think that maybe the title of the band doesn't quite give it away. They're one of those bands that when people know about them, they absolutely adore them. They're like me, and the fan base is extremely strong and big. But because their band name isn't gory or brutal or that typical sort of metal sounding name, their album covers do not look like heavy metal at all, let alone death metal, progressive death metal. So they have this thing of a lot of the mainstream metal crowd don't even know that this band exists, but they are still pretty big, and they've gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. But we'll get on to the rankings. I just want to give it a bit of a background of this band because they're not quite as well known by the mainstream metal as other bands I may have done a ranking for. So before I get doing the rankings, I just want to let you know all about them. And there's some songs to check out before I get going, if you really want to check them out, and some songs to check out that are just magnificent and will help you get into them. A song called Extremophile Elite, which I think is one of the best metal songs ever made. The way that keyboard starts out, it sounds very much like 70s prog rock. Then these big, wonderful angular guitar riffs with the 2 guitars and the bass all sort of mimicking each other in the riffs. And then you get to the bit in that song at about 8:05 where it's mesmerising, absolutely brilliant. Another great song to check out by them is called Swim to the Moon. Incredible, flawless song. A Decade of Statues, Informal Gluttony, White Walls, Telos, and Specular Reflection. They would be the biggest songs that I would check out. They are brilliant, and they are the songs that really show you what this band's all about. If you like those songs or love those songs, then you'll love everything they've done. That's what really shows off this band. They have generally long songs. A lot of their songs are sort of 9 to 10 to 11 minutes. Some songs up into the 14, 15-minute marks. Early on in their days, they were around the sort of typical 5 or 6 minute mark. So anyway, I'll get started on the rankings. And would you believe I changed this about 4 or 5 days ago, and I know this because on the video I actually said what my my third favourite album was. And when I went back during the week when I was making sure I got everything right and ready, I went, you know what? I think a few of them have moved up and one of them has moved down a bit. So we'll see. Now, 2 of the albums I don't own physical copies of. I thought I did, and then when I pulled these out to do the video, I went, oh, I don't have them, that's fine. I'm not including one of the studio albums because one of the studio albums is a covers album. They just did all the covers. But I will say their cover of Metallica Blackened is one of the... I don't really like covers much, as you know, but it's one of the very few covers I like. But I'm actually including an EP in this list. I don't normally include EPs when I do rankings. For 2 reasons. One, it is brilliant, but the other thing is it's an EP that's 32 minutes long. So it's only an EP because it's 3 songs, but it is 32 minutes long. So there you go. So here we go. Coming in at, so it's 10. There's actually 9 studio original albums, but there's going to be 10 because I'm including that EP. So coming in at number 10 is their debut. Self-titled, Between the Buried and Me. I mean, as you can see straight away, that's the album cover. You'd have no idea that this is one of the most brutal death metal albums you'll hear. And that's why it's at number 10 for me. Now, as you know, I do love my brutal death metal. I love extreme metal very much. But for me, that's not what this band is all about. And I know that's a weird thing to say, but this is just very, very good. And to give you an idea, it's still an 8 out of 10 for me. But it's all about the aggression and the anger and being as heavy as possible and all. And the things that I love about this band aren't quite on this album yet. You know, this is a very, very typical debut album of a band where they're not quite knowing what they're about yet. They've never copied anyone. This band is completely original, but this album doesn't really sound like them. It could be other people, if you know what I mean. Some very good songs on here. Track 2, Arsonist. Naked by the Computer is a great song, and Chevenel Cut a Flip is a very, very good song. But yeah, 2002, their debut, coming in at number 10. Coming in at number 9 is Automata 1. Automata 1 came out in 2018. Favourite song on this album is I like Blot, Yellow Eyes. The problem I have with this album a little bit and its partner is they were released separately. They were released in the same year, 2018, and I think they made a bit of a mistake that some bands do of when they release, it's like a double album, but they release it separately. I think if they'd put all the best songs onto one album and just released that, I think it would have been much better. I think they spread it a little bit thin. I could see what they were trying to do, but it may have been spread just a little bit thin over the 2 separate albums, and just a little bit weird releasing them sort of 4 months apart as well. That would be why this is ranked at number 9. And the other part why I think it's ranked at 9 and its partner is close by is that for so long they'd been so great and pretty damn perfect that this was kind of disappointing. It feels like they've maybe got to the top of the parabola and they've started sort of coming down a bit. So that's why it's also, because it was like, this band is great, this band is great, this band is great, this band is great, and then a little bit sort of, oh, yeah. Still love it, still love both of these. This one I give 8.5 out of 10, and it comes in at number 9. Coming in at number 8, The Silent Circus, which is their second album, came out 2003. Excellent album. Definitely you can hear the progressive elements starting to come through. A little bit more clean singing by Tommy Rogers. You can hear what is around the corner, but still brutal. Very, very brutal and really kick-ass. I mean, heavy, heavy, heavy stuff. Favourite tracks on here are Lost Perfection, Mordecai, and Aesthetic, and a song that I'll go ahead and try and pronounce, but I don't think you meant to. It's called Ada Dugelmut. There we go. I'll try and... There it is there. I'm pretty sure the band said it's deliberately not being meant to be able to be pronounced. They're a little bit like that too. They never take themselves too seriously. These guys are all about the music. And as you can see, once again, it's an album cover that's just, even when you take it out of that sleeve, you'd have no idea that that's one of the most brutal progressive death metal albums ever made. You just wouldn't, right? Very, very good. The last album of theirs. Oh no, because the latest ones, but yeah, for the first two albums for me, as much as I love them a lot, they're the last of that style of Between the Buried and Me, before they became the full-blown progressive death metal masterpiece makers that they are now. Coming in at number 7 is Automator Part 2, which is a completely separate album, but as I say, came out the same time as Automator 1, 2018. Favourite songs on there are Voice of Trespass, The Grid, and The Proverbial Below. A little bit better than Automator 1. Just liked it a little bit more, but yeah, if they combined the best songs off Automator 1 and Automator 2 and made it one album, this album would probably be sort of 6th where it is. Still falls below their greats, but it would have been even better. And perhaps it says something why I don't have a physical copy. I thought I did, but perhaps that says why I still, to this day, 3 years on, don't have a physical copy, because maybe my subconscious said, well, yeah, completionist, maybe you should get it, but it's one of those, I'll get around to it to finish off, so maybe that's why. Coming in at number 6, Coma Ecliptic. Definitely their most progressive rock album. Still some metal on here. Not much death metal anymore. Hardly any. A mix between progressive metal and progressive rock. Definitely channeling their love of 70s prog rock on here. This came out 2015. Was a big shift. Probably their biggest shift in sound. Because for quite a while they'd been the progressive death metal, technical death metal sound, and then this came out and it was, whoa, okay, very progressive rock. Mostly clean singing by Tommy on this one, and quite sort of psychedelic, heavy psych, all that sort of stuff. But a very good album. Very, very, very good. Brought up by my favourite songs on here. There's some stuff on here that is just okay for me, but then the stuff that I like on here, I like a lot, and one of the songs on here, Memory Palace, is one of my favourite songs by them of all time. Just brilliant. My favourite songs on here, Famine Wolf, Turn on the Darkness, The Coma Machine, and yeah, Memory Palace. Memory Palace is just absolutely incredible. 2015. This was their 7th album. And coming in at number 6. Now coming in 5th, and I think on my last video when I was talking about either this album or the record that I showed the other day, I said that this album was my 3rd favourite. But when I listened to it, not that this went down, but albums I had below it, I went, no, I actually like them better. And I think I'm pretty happy with this. I think it's because this album I've had for a long time. I felt very beloved and attached to it. But when I listened to them this week, just to make sure, I went, you know what? I think Not that, as I say, not that this one's gone down, but the ones that I had below it actually have gone up quite a lot. So coming in at number 5, Alaska, and I've shown this in a video before. Now this was the other big change. Well, not a big change, but this is when they went from the first 2 albums that were just pretty much straight up brutal death metal. This is when they really turned on the progressive switch and started channeling King Crimson and Camel and Yes and Jethro Tull and all the big Genesis, all the big prog rock bands. This came out 2005. It was their 3rd album, and as I say, a big switch. It has one of their biggest songs of all time on here called Selkies, The Endless Obsession, which is the other song I should have mentioned for you to check out if you've never heard of them before. Brilliant album. Some old fans like me actually still refer to this as their favourite. I think they got better. This is still very brutal, still very heavy, and I think they did better on the next 4 albums of combining the progressive and the death metal a bit better and getting even better on their complexities and their songwritings. This one still maybe leans a little bit more onto the brutal death metal over the progressive, but it's getting close. It's almost 50-50, but still more. Favourite songs on here, All Bodies, Alaska, Crokies and Boat Shoes, Selkies, The Endless Obsession, one of the best progressive death metal songs ever made, Robo Turner. Yeah, everything on here is really good. And as I say, once again, you're looking at that album cover, you go, how do I know that's progressive death metal and brutal as well? But it is. Tommy's Clean's getting even more on here, but there's still a lot of death growls on there. Now, these are the 2 that switched up. These are the 2 that, the more and more I listened to them this week, I went, you know what, these are actually even better. So this is the EP that I was talking about. This comes in at number 4. As I say, it's 32 minutes long, so it's only an EP in its technicality, I guess, because it's only 3 songs, but it's 32 minutes long, and a very long title. The Parallax Hypersleep Dialogues. 3 tracks, but they are absolute perfection. I love this very, very much. This was, now when did this come out? 2011. Now the timeline's obviously a little bit out here because I'm doing it as a ranking, not when they came out, but at this stage they were very much 50-50, progressive and death metal, very much 50-50 down the line. In fact, probably a little bit more on the straight up progressive metal side, just a touch. Specular Reflection, track 1 on here, is definitely one of the songs I would suggest you check out if you don't know this band. Specular Reflection, the part at 4:41, 4 minutes and 41 seconds, till about 7 minutes, is one of my favourite passages of music of all time. It is just magnificent, and once again, one of those moments that if I can, I pull over the side of the road so I can just sit and enjoy it and listen, or if I'm playing it at home or whatever, I'll definitely actually repeat just that section alone. It's so good. A great album. This is, for me, when this band was just absolutely could do no wrong. Just perfect. Coming in at number 3, this one also came up. So they're sort of linked together, these 2, the EP and this. So the EP was almost like the curtain raiser for this, and a very similar style, the same sort of writing, the same period in their progression. This came out 2012, sorry, and they're on Metal Blade. I'm not sure who they're on at this stage still. I don't know because I haven't got the physical copy in front of me, but yeah, this stage they were on Metal Blade. The Parallax 2 Future Sequence, incredible. Absolutely incredible. And this is the gig that I saw where they played this album in its entirety live. This has Extremophile Elite, which is easily one of my favourite metal songs of all time. As I say, the keyboard that starts, and then the 2 guitars and the bass playing that same riff in unison and mirroring each other to start that song is incredible. And then when you get to 8:05, blows me away every time. Other great songs on here are Astral Body, Lay Your Ghosts to Rest, Telos, one of the heaviest songs I've ever done, and The Silent Flight Parliament is just a masterpiece. Juggernaut of an album, 72 minutes long, and for me this is their last great album. So a Coma Ecliptic came out after this. This is the end of their golden era, if you like, from 2005 to now. I think this is when they were doing everything perfect, the perfect blend of progressive and death metal. Oh, I love this album. I love this album so much. And when I listened to it this week, I originally had this album at either 4th or 5th with its EP Mate. And when I listened to it again, and I've been listening a fair bit again today, I went, nah, this is 3rd. In fact, it kind of knocks on the door of number 2, even a little bit of the second album. So yeah, fantastic album. Second favourite coming in, number 2. Talked a little bit about this album. I haven't shown it before, but The Great Misdirect. This came out in 2009, right smack bang in the heyday of their fantastic, where they couldn't do anything the slightest bit wrong. I love this album. It is, I think, one of the greatest progressive extreme metal albums of all time. There's only a few others that go above it. Enslaved do quite a few, and obviously the one that finishes number 1. This has probably my favourite song by them all time on here. Either Extremophile Elite or the song on here called Swim to the Moon, which I've talked about before. They're probably my 2 favourite songs overall by them. And Swim to the Moon alone probably means this album will be my second favourite album by them, because it's just so good. I mean, I love the rest of the album. Obfuscation, I think that's how you say it, is brilliant. And one of their few songs that was kind of a single and had a music video and did kind of well in the mainstream, Desert of Song, another great song. Yeah, a great album, The Great Misdirect, 2009. So coming in at number 1, and I think you know what this is because I showed it on a previous video the other day, and I said that this is my 5th of my all-time favourite metal albums, and that's their 2007 album, Colours. Once again, like I said in the last video, you'd never know that was progressive death metal, technical death metal, not at all. This is the gatefold. I won't show all the record again, I showed that last time. And it's perfect. It's 64 minutes long of absolute perfection. There's not one thing on here I could possibly change. I've listened to this album, as I say, so many times since 2007, probably my most listened to album since 2007. A perfect album on the road. I listened to it on the road on loop over and over, and I never got sick of it, never once, not even, and it was continuous on loop. And every time it got back from the start, I've got it on CD as well, but every time it got back to the start, I just wanted to listen to it all over again. Now, when the band actually says, the interesting thing about this album is that even though it has 8 track listings on the back there, the band has actually said that this is actually kind of meant to be one whole continuous song. The way they wrote it and the way they thought it up and planned it out, it was kind of meant to be one whole long, big continuous song. But the songs on here, The Decade of Statues and Informal Gluttony, one of the best 1-2 punches ever on any album. Ants of the Sky, amazing. Prequel to the sequel, incredible. And then the big masterpiece at the end, White Walls. And then even, Son of Nothing and Viridian. I feel like I'm cheating anything if I don't call out a song on here because it's just perfect. It's really good. An absolutely flawless album. On my bucket list to see this album performed in its entirety live. I've heard in most of a good half of the individual songs on here performed live in other sets, but to hear this performed live in its entirety is on my absolute bucket list. So there we go. That's my ranking of Between the Buried and Me, their albums. I hope you enjoyed that. Please check them out if you think you might like them or you never heard them before. If if you didn't quite get what I said with the songs, rewind that bit and listen. Check out those songs that I recommended. They can, because the songs are complex and long and there's a lot going on, and their early stuff is quite extreme, can be a little bit daunting getting into them. So I feel if you try those songs out first that I suggested, that's your best way in your entrance to get in. Memory Palace might even be one of the best to start off with, because it's not quite as extreme. It's definitely more on the progressive rock, progressive metal side of things. But I highly recommend you check them out. If they do come to your town, if concerts start up again wherever you are, and they come to your town, I highly recommend you see them live. They are flawless, just absolute magicians, and they do everything every bit as good as you hear on the recorded album. But of course, when you hear it live, it has all the energy and a little bit of extra heaviness that you get with a live show. So thanks very much for watching. I know this might have been a bit of a long one, but I do love this band very much, and I wanted to give the full worth that they deserve, in my opinion, for doing a ranking video of their albums. So yeah, thanks very much for watching, and I'll catch you all soon.